Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Joined, as always, by my good friends Mark Ostrander and Grant Turner. Marco, we missed you this weekend, and we should give a quick shout-out, GT. Jason Keck paid everybody's wing bets on Friday. Or is it Friday? Friday, yeah.
I owe him.
No, we're even. He said it was good. So,
I don't know you wings, David, and I don't know Grant wings because
Keck wiped the board clean. We'll just say that. So you'll see him in NCAAs, and we can settle up. But it was great. I will say this, and I don't know if I should speak for GT, but normally when he and I see each other, it's always great, but usually one of us is working fairly hard. And that afternoon, both of us had some free time, and it was super cool to just kind of hang out for a couple hours. We talked about wrestling stuff, but we talked a lot about just life and stuff. And it was, he found the Vine, which has some of the best wings in Iowa City. It was just super fun, man. And then we got to see Justin McClintock and his son, who is one of your former wrestlers, who, Mark, this dude's impression of you is so good, bro. It is so good. I don't know.
I've heard it for the last 23, 24 years. So
yes, but we had not. So it's
pretty entertaining.
Oh no.
And a quality human being. He's one of the nicest kids.
No. Yeah, Justin's awesome. Okay, Justin wrestled against us at Merrimack when we had Nick Vogt, who's one of my favorite guys. Okay, and they went back and forth, and they were both All-Americans. So they're great wrestlers, better people. And I mean to blow by that, but he does an impression. GT, how good? Okay, which impression is better, Tom Brands or Mark Ostrander?
Well, I thought, because I hadn't seen McClintock do an impression of Mark yet, so I was taken back by it because, once again, he had some good stories for you, Mark. But I mean, McClintock just does really good impressions of everybody. He just does a really good job. But it was it was really funny knowing Mark and then knowing McClintock and then hearing the stories that ensued from bus driving to coaching in the corner, coaching in practice, all of the things.
My glasses. They used to hide my glasses, Grant.
Yeah, that was brought up, Mark, and I believe that you were like, "Hey, you guys are going to sprint until somebody gives me my glasses." So the boys were just happy to run for a little while.
He did the voice like, "We can run all day. We can run all day until I get my glasses back." It was great. It was. And here's the thing, I don't want to spend much more time with McClintock because he'll have me and GT figured out, and I'm sure it'll be embarrassing because we all have our idiosyncrasies. But anyway, he was super fun to hang out with, and he drove us up there. We had a parking pass, so again, thank you, Gary Abbott. Coach Keck and I had a great time, and we were on the floor. And I think when we get into the duel, there's some interesting observations that I think we were able to have being on the floor. But I want to start out with women's wrestling. So this is from the NCAA website on Feb 7. Women's wrestling on Wednesday took a big step toward becoming the 91st NCAA championship sport with its projected first NCAA championship winner 2026. The NCAA Committee on Women's Athletics voted at its meeting Wednesday to recommend D1, D2, D3 sponsor legislation to add a National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championship. The association-wide committee oversees the Emerging Sports for Women's program, which includes women's wrestling. Quote, "We are excited to recommend women's wrestling as the 91st NCAA championship sport. We are extremely proud of the work that USA Wrestling has done to make this a reality in such a short period of time. Also, a special thank you to the men's wrestling community for believing in our women and championing the process." This is from Reagan Hill, chair of the Committee on Women's Athletics and Executive Associate AD, Senior Women Admin at Charlotte. Following the recommendation, the projected timeline is each division is expected to review the recommendation and sponsor a proposal by its respective 24-25 legislative cycle deadline. The recommendation also includes establishing a committee, which would begin its work January 25, to allow time to prepare for a championship of winter of 26. If sponsored, the divisions are expected to vote on the proposal in Nashville, January 15 to 18 of 25, I would guess. If adopted on that timeline, the first championship would be 2026. Bunch of other quotes here, but bottom line, and we're a USA Wrestling podcast, but when those people at that level acknowledge what USA Wrestling is doing in making something that is landmark in the sport, you know, Mark, you're the old wise head on the pod, for real. Thoughts on this?
I think it's absolutely been overdue. I think it should have been going on for NAIA Division II, Division III schools, because a lot more of them have them. Division I, I'm not sure how they're going to have something set up by we just don't have enough teams yet, but I think it's going to make other schools start picking up the sport, which is kind of what we were hoping for in the first place. So, yeah, kudos.
GT, obviously, this overlaps a ton with the USA Wrestling side of things. You're at an NAIA school that has a very good women's team. It's also the overlap of women wrestle freestyle in college, which is your wheelhouse. So just, again, your thoughts on this.
I think it's just a great step forward. I love the idea of being able to have, the continuation of building women's athletics within the scope of wrestling. So being able to continue to build programs, build sponsorship, build fanship, build all of that together. I think it's a great way to solidify some of that movement for a lot of the schools and the people that have put their best foot forward in providing opportunities for women's athletics. So I'm very excited about what they're going to continue to build in the U.S. With women's wrestling.
It's significant, right, guys? Like, no matter what scale, no matter how you judge it, there's no way to minimize the impact of this, the legitimacy of this. I can't remember who I talked to. I've talked to so many people in the last week, but one person said, like, I was an old head. It was Mike Powell. It was Mike Powell who was on Matt Chat, and he said, I was an old head when women's wrestling first came out. I wasn't as supportive as I should have been. He goes, and then you realize how important it is for, and he's working with young girls at the Beat the Streets level, but how skilled it's gotten on that side of things, and also how important it is for Title IX. Like, our sport used to just be hanging out there in the wind because there was no equivalent, and it was easy. It was the easiest sport to chop, and now it's not. And you can certainly argue that wrestling does a lot more to benefit young women, specifically in terms of self-defense and other things later in life, than other sports. So kudos to everybody involved. It's obviously not, the ball isn't pushed all the way down the hill yet, but it feels like they got to the top of the hill. GT, it's fair to say they're at the top of the hill and they got some momentum on their side now. Like, most of the heavy lifting is done, and now it's just dotting I's and crossing T's. Is that a fair assessment of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a very fair assessment of it.
Yeah. So tons of work involved with people that we don't even know. But again, I know the folks like Rich Bender, Gary Abbott, Cody Bickley, all those folks are, probably other people I'm not mentioning. Tons of work behind the scenes. So massive shout out to everybody that was involved in it, and then the folks that are going to benefit from it. All right, let's talk Penn State, Iowa. We can get into our picks quickly. Mark went 8-2. I went 8-2. GT went 7-3. However, GT got the most matches exactly right with 4. Mark had 3. I had 2. And then I came closest to the team score, and GT was second and Mark was third. So I feel like it's kind of a push, depending on which category you want to look at. We all finished first, second, or third. So we'll just have Keck buy us wings next time again, and then it'll be fine. So let's start. Mark, you were watching it on TV.
I was.
Thoughts?
Well, I was awful tired. I'd worked a 14-hour day, so I watched it late. So I got to watch it like at 10:30 at night. I Penn State's really good. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, but they're a really solid team. 25, kind of what I thought would happen. I thought Drake would win. I thought it'd be close. I just thought he's a little too finessed for him right now because he's a true freshman against a redshirt sophomore. 49 was a great match. Besides that, Iowa just got blown out. There wasn't another really close match that you looked at and say, hey, that could have went either way. There wasn't. It was just overwhelming how far behind Iowa is from Penn State right now. And probably every team in the country, to be honest with you, is that far behind Penn State also. So it's not like this is a shocker that Iowa's that far behind. Everybody's that far behind.
GT, Mark got caught saying we 1.5 times in there.
Can't help
the
it.
first one he choked it down, and the second one he didn't. So, all right, GT, you were in the crowd. We should give a shout out to Robert Chisholm and Omar Padilla. They were there with you. Really good dudes from Kansas City, and have done a lot in sport of wrestling to help grow the sport. So shout out to those guys. Your thoughts? I mean, you're in the crowd because I had some interesting people cheering behind me, which I'll get to. So, what were your thoughts?
Well, Penn State looked extremely crisp, looked really good. I thought probably one of the best matches of the night was 149 pounds between Ratchie and Kasich. I just thought that those guys put a show on for the crowd. Ratchie ended up getting the victory, but once again, I think it just showed that like both those guys came to scrap. So just give those guys a little bit of flowers for their match. I think also just how dominant Penn State looked against Iowa's All-Americans. I think Levi Haynes showed there was a definite tier to his game comparative to Jared Franick, who had been previously ranked number 2 in the nation. And, once again, Franick probably didn't have the best match of representing himself. I think that we all are pretty high on Michael Caliendo as a former All-American and also just a really talented wrestler. Mitchell Messenbrink is a very special talent, where it seems to be that he is on the rise, wrestling extremely talented right now. And then, of course, the heavy hitters of Penn State did heavy hitter things. Bo Bartlett, Carter Starachi, Aaron Brooks, Greg Kirkfleet. They all looked extremely talented. I thought Riggins wrestled the best he's wrestled this year. I think he's continuing to do really well. And then I think also PK did a good job of wrestling up, if anybody thinks like maybe 1 or even 2 weights from where he could have a really good potential as an athlete. He's wrestling extremely talented at 74 and kind of showed it against Starachi. But just, you could see, Carter just was just a bit better that day. So
I kind of got multiple points here. The first thing is the demeanor of the Penn State. So we're sitting right next to Penn State. And I can tell you this, I watched that duel, and then Monday night I watched the Penn State-Rutgers duel. The tone of how the opposing coaches talk to their guys versus how Penn State talks to their guys is markedly different. Penn State may be the most calm bench in America. I mean, like there was the one call, the PD call at 57, where Haynes was going around and was going to score, and they called PD, and it really wasn't PD. Like, they don't get crazy. Like, Casey just goes, that's a really bad call. You missed that call, but it's not like, what are you doing? Like, going crazy. The second part of the demeanor, and Keck and I were talking about this, is I watched as they walked back, every single one of the Penn State guys were smiling. I don't know if that was conscious, because, I mean, when you're smiling, it's hard to be nervous, or at least it makes you look like you're not nervous. But that was a big thing. The third thing was I got to talk to Messenbrink's dad the next day. I think people know this, but Messenbrink's dad wrestled for my dad when I was in high school, so we used to work out together a lot. And I just asked him how he was enjoying it, and everything else. And he said, the feedback is so quick. He goes, like, I don't know if you noticed, Dave, but last weekend Mitchell had a hard time getting out of legs against Ohio State. He goes, so he just goes in Monday and they put him with Zane Rutherford for the day. And they work on getting out of legs and the feel and everything else. And he goes, so the jumps are bigger and they're quicker. And I just get the feeling that Penn State is probably doing more one-on-ones than everybody in the country. That they're working with Grant on finishing sweep single, and they're working with Mark on getting out of legs, and they're working on David on sitting the corner, whatever the case may be. But I just feel like they're working so much on this. Like, if you guys watch the match Monday night, Braden Davis won on dang near the same move he lost on Friday night. He won on a shrug and lost on a shrug. You know, some version of a shrug, a pass by, slide by, whatever you want to call it. I mean, these guys are making adjustments super fast. And if you watch their technique on how they're finishing that sweep single shin wizard position and how they're finishing the waterfall position, they're doing it a little bit different than everybody else. To me, the one things we didn't specifically mention by you guys was how bad Bo Bartlett beat Woods, like 2 takedowns to none. And then Bo Bartlett doesn't win the Rutgers match till 10 seconds left in the third period. It was like he's had so many close matches this year, and that one he scored early, and Woods never touched his legs. And I can't tell. GT, like, you're still coaching actively. Do you feel like Woods has just had a couple bad meets, or do you feel like it's a bigger slide than that?
It's hard to tell because I don't necessarily know maybe if there's something going on, if he's hurt or if like he's just, but the one observation that I will make is that like Real's offense has been extremely stagnant. Like in the losses that he's had, he was extremely dynamic, you know, in his wins. Like he's not a grinder type athlete. He's got special skills. He's, you know, he can ride people, he can turn people, he can scramble through positions and wrestle extremely talented. I just think, and not necessarily against Bo Bartlett, but I think against the Michigan kid, you know, in the losses that Real's had, like he just doesn't use those explosive tendencies or athleticism that he normally would have. And that's just maybe an observation outside looking in, that, you know, he's less dynamic than he has been, especially in the recent losses and the recent matches.
Mark, I mean, you're the wee guy over there. Will he bounce back to number 1 status by Big Tens and NCAAs, you think?
The way he's wrestling right now, I don't think so. I think guys have just caught up to him. I was just amazed how hard it was for Iowa to try to get out the whole duel. And that's just not, it was more than one weight. I mean, it was almost every weight. I think 25 and 49, we got out fairly quick. That wasn't something, but the rest of the weights, we got ridden pretty good. Okay, all right. Go back to that, David. Iowa got ridden pretty good. So
yeah, you might as well ride the wheat train all the way in this week.
What the heck? Anyway, that, you know, just by watching, that's what really surprised me, because the University of Iowa is usually really good underneath. They get out, they're quick, great stand-ups. They're not going to let you work them over. They want to be the one doing all that, and it got done to them. So,
yeah, it was overall. I mean, I don't know that there were any upsets on paper, honestly, right? Like, I mean, Ayala was, I guess, because Braden was ranked ahead of him, but I mean, that's the curse of 125 this year, right? The higher ranked guy just seems to lose every week. You know, 33, the favorite one, the 41, the favorite one, 49. I think Rachi might have been 2 spots behind him, but that's a toss up. Haynes was favored. I think Messenbrink might have been a spot behind Caliendo, and then, you know, the last 4 weights, Penn State's clearly favored. So, you know, I mean, it's also the difference between dual meets and tournaments. Like, I mean, it's 8-2 in dual meets and to be bigger in tournaments. Like they'll, you know, I guess it won't percentage wise because they almost beat them like 5-1, and they're not going to beat them by 5-1 ratio wise, but the points are obviously going to be significantly different. So GT, let's talk about Iowa State, Northern Iowa. And if you want to drop a "we" in here for the Cyclones, feel free. Or just do an ownership day at the old ballpark. So kind of the matches that were interesting were, I'm trying to click on this and there we go. All right. So Tirakina lost to Anderson in overtime at 141. Echemendia, who is ranked 9, beat Happel, who is ranked 6th. That now creates a really goofy thing at 141 in the Big 12s, where Echemendia beat Happel, who beat Tegan Jamison, who beat Echemendia. So that seed's going to be interesting. Ryder Downey beats Chittum. That was 15 beating 14. Those were the main, like upsets, close matches. Both these teams feel like they're on the rise, and Iowa State's like sneaky good this year. They have like 6 guys that could legit All-American. Your thoughts there?
Well, I think to take a stance on the Northern Iowa guys, they have 3 freshmen winning that duel, between Anderson, Downey, and Wyatt Volker. So along with, Parker Keckheisen, that's a pretty, like Parker's a, leader by example, but those freshmen wrestled extremely good against a top 5 team in Iowa State. I think as far as some of the results there, I think, Younger looked really dominant again. I think, they kind of have had some really good success with, MJ's coming along pretty well for Iowa State, showing a lot more confidence there. It was really cool to see Knackenborn wrestle as well. Because I think, he's going to be kind of one of the guys of the future of Iowa State's program. And it was cool to see him kind of inside Hilton. So, but when we talk about sneaky teams that could potentially come up there and steal some hardware at Kansas City, I think Iowa State's got a pretty dang good little group, as we kind of did some exercises on Saturday morning going through some of the team race stuff where, we talk about who could get hot and all of a sudden get second, or, who could get hot and, potentially get up there and get a trophy. And I think with Iowa State, there could be, potential to be extremely talented, or they could get 20th. It's just like one of those things that, like, the field is so close, I think from 2nd to 15, it's very difficult to talk about.
Mark, look at Grant just putting segments out there. So if you're watching, this is fantasygrade.com, and this is where they do the combination team ranking. So I talked to each of you guys individually on Saturday, and we talked about how Penn State would actually drop in the rankings because Braden Davis was going to drop, and Messenbrink was only going to move up 1 slot, and Kasich was going to drop, maybe not point-wise. He might stay in that 9 through 12 range, or he might lose a half a point. So they were like at 147 or 8, and they dropped to 141. But here are the team scores for numbers 2 through 10. This is the composite average of intermat, flow, win, and open mat. And these are not going to be in numerical order. I'll do them in numerical order. Oklahoma State, 66.1. And if you guys are wondering how that happens, it's because it's the average of 4. NC State, 63.9. Iowa State, 60.3. Iowa, 59.9. Michigan, 55.9. Cornell, 55.8. Virginia Tech, 55.4. Nebraska, 52.8. Missouri, 51.8. Then Nebraska, then Lehigh at 48.8. So literally there's 18 points between 11 and 2, which is just one extra guy placing and one guy not placing on each team. So somebody asked me this: who wins at nationals, Iowa or Iowa State? I will not hang up and listen, but and we have one person from each side of it. So GT, make the argument for Iowa State, and then Mark, you make the argument for Iowa.
Well, I think
what are we winning? What are we winning, David? Who wins?
Winning anything? We're just putting out a quality product.
No, what I'm saying is, you said who wins at nationals, Iowa or Iowa State, and what happened to Penn State? Or are you talking about just getting the trophy?
who's just versus each other. Who
Oh,
scores more points?
okay. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, first and foremost, it is not a we, us, Iowa State versus Iowa conversation. And I'm not necessarily, I mean, I can be the token representation of Iowa State, but please know that these are not generalities. I am basically for everybody that is wrestling in the country so far. Just to
Mark,
make sure
Mark isn't, but you are. We got it.
That's not true, David. That's not true.
So I truly think if I were to break this down and give this kind of opinion of how things happen, I think Iowa State has more ability to put people into the semifinals or into the finals than Iowa does. Now, I think Iowa has the ability to maybe have more All-Americans in total, but I think Iowa State has a little bit more heavy favorites, I would say, between like younger, David Carr, and then, potentially like, Frost and or Echemendia. I think those guys, I mean, and Swiderski's kind of good too. And Chittum hasn't necessarily had a whole bunch of, like strung together matches because he's been injured and things. But I just think that we've all kind of agreed that like it's, we were talking about locks before. I think it was either off air or in the air. And I'd say probably David Carr, if he wrestles how he normally wrestles, he's pretty much a lock to get top 3, in my opinion. I think younger Bastida, I think, is in the kind of the same kind of category. I think he's kind of a lock to be in the top 3 as he's wrestled so far. Once again, the national tournament, Big 12 championships, anything can happen between now and then, but he's kind of proven to be in that league currently.
Yeah.
As of late, I don't think you can say that about many of the Iowa athletes as it currently has kind of transport. And once again, they've just come off 2 losses. There's not necessarily their best product or best showing against potentially a Michigan and or Penn State. But as of right now, I don't feel as Real Woods being a lock to be a top 3 guy the way that he's been wrestling the past couple of matches. Now, we all know that he's extremely talented and he's a rock star and he's really, really, really good. But as we're sitting here right now on, Wednesday the 14th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, I have less confidence in him becoming that guy as it just sits today. And then the only other person that I would even have in that conversation for Iowa currently is maybe Drake Ayala with a really big win over Brendan Davis. And, him just being a highly ranked guy in that weight class is kind of volatile right now. But you wouldn't necessarily, I don't think anybody thinks that there's a lock at 125 in the nation as pure chaos since week 1.
Yeah.
So that's why I would say, in my opinion, I'm more heavily favored towards an Iowa State top-ended pick. But I also know that like with Caliendo, Franek, PK, the way that Ratchie's been wrestling Woods and Ayala, they have a really good team that could have, 6, 7 All-Americans. But I just think Iowa State has a little bit more top-heavy talent. They could also have 6, 7 All-Americans.
Yeah. So if people are watching this, we have Iowa State. I guess Iowa State, Iowa is the way I have it up here. Iowa, here's their guys that are ranked in order, just by the ranks. Woods 2, Ayala 3, Franek 5, Kennedy 6, Caliendo 7, Rachi 10, Zach Glazer 11, Schriever 23, Hill 30, and nobody at 184. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in AA status, 2 rounded 12. Iowa State, Carr 2, Younger 3, then Frost, Echemendia, Swiderski, Feldkamp all 7th, and Chittum 14th, MJ Gaitan 20th. So the thing about guys that are 7th, 6th, 5th through whatever is it means you probably didn't make the semifinals. And then you're going to be in the round of 12, which is that do or die round. And Iowa State's got a lot of guys that it looks like are going to be in that round. So Mark, make the argument for the Hawks.
Well, the argument is they can't wrestle any worse than they have the last 2 duels. they've been known to turn it up when it counts. So I think they will. I think they got a lot of talent in the room. I think the guys work hard. It's just going to be such a tough tournament. I think Drake Ayala could be a finalist or place in the round of 12. I mean, that's just the way the weight is right now. I think Real Woods will probably, if he's healthy, will turn it around. I think he's just, he's been there, he's done it. It's different when you haven't done it. He's been in the finals. He knows how to get there. So, and Franek, I think, is going to be fine. Caliendo is going to be fine. Kennedy's going to be good. I don't know why people are, and I'm probably one of the people that was sleeping on Zach Glazier. The guy's had a really good year. I mean, he's probably wrestled closer, against Penn State at 197, the best kid in the country, probably pound for pound, arguably the best kid in the country, and lost 4-1. I mean, he didn't do a lot, but he didn't give up a lot of points. So I'm going to give him credit there. I think he's going to be a hard out for anybody. So I think because of him, I think he's the reason that they are going to be just a little bit better than Iowa State.
It's super close though, right? I mean, like you guys could easily, I put you guys on each side of the argument, but I don't even know if each of you believe that side, and you could easily go the other way. It may come down to bonus points. It may come down to somebody getting a injury default on the backside that somebody else didn't get, which happens every year. We see it. Wyatt Sheets might be the perfect example of it. The 33 seed that ends up, getting an 8th place AA. So it does happen. It is super interesting. Your point about Glazier and Brooks, it was really interesting when Brooks walked off the mat. He just said to the coaching staff, he's like, he didn't want to wrestle. He didn't want to do anything. So I just, I couldn't do anything. That's what he said walking off. I thought it was, really interesting. Like, there's two thought processes there, right? Well, okay, like if you're the better guy, you force it and make it happen. And the other one is, okay, the duel is locked up, just win the match. Here's the other thing that I think I shouldn't say people don't. Some people don't realize this maybe on how nerded out they are in wrestling. And if person A is if Grant is better than me in a dual meet, sometimes I'm doing my job by just not getting majored or teched. At the NCAAs, I'm actually going to try to win. And the more I try to win, the better it is for Grant. So, like, the better guys are going to probably score more points, get in more scrambles, get more bonus points than they will in a duel. And Glazier Brooks is just one example. It happens every year. Like, guys go for throws late, and now a caught throw is 7 points. That's going to take somebody from a decision to a major no matter what. And it can take them from like a major, it could take them from 7 to a tech if they had added riding time, which is crazy. So I think we're going to see more of that. All right, let's go through the rankings, and then there's a couple duels we should probably talk about. So 125, the big news was Ayala moves up, Braden Davis moved down. So GT, I know you watched the match Monday night. By the way, super cool shout out to Nike for the black and pink singlets and the custom shoes. Obviously, that had to be in the works for a while. Somebody said that was originally Penn State school colors. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is a throwback to the original colors of Penn State. They've done, Bo Bartlett, I think he tweeted out, he's like, hey guys, been getting a lot of questions about why they did the black and pink night. And then he sent out a tweet to the history of Penn State's color change from dating back all the way to the very beginning. So it's been something that Penn State does periodically with some of their other, I would say, more Olympic sports teams. I don't think that they've necessarily used it a ton in collegiate football. But it's a really cool throwback to, early days of Penn State. So it's something really cool to kind of, once again, have fun with. when it comes to, the collegiate sports landscape.
Yeah, and it easily could be like a breast cancer awareness double down, with the pink and everything. So the reason I guess I brought this duel up was too, they didn't have video review. Like, does anybody know how that happens?
Well, I had asked some questions to some other coaches, that night or whatever, but once again, there's aspects of, like, I think it's mandated by the Big Ten. They have some of their duels in Rec Hall, some of their duels in Bryce Jordan. Maybe there was some technical difficulties with the, whatever it is, the stream or the computer or the cameras. Sometimes that stuff happens. But for that, whatever the first challenge brick that occurred at like 125, they couldn't determine the match. They didn't have video review for that scramble or takedown. So it was just it was a shame to see, and it's just really difficult to see that on the biggest stage of our collegiate athletics.
It's odd too, because it feels like it was on Big Ten Network. It feels like they could just go to their feed and watch the review. So anyway, all right. Caleb Smith beat DiAugustino. We didn't even talk about that duel. My goodness. Nebraska just woodshedded Michigan. Like, they won 8 out of 10 matches, and one of Michigan's win was only 1-0 at 174. So that was bonkers. When we get to 49, like, Ridge Lovett looked like, I was wrong there. I actually think I picked Gomez, I think when I was talking to Mark off the air, or maybe on the air. So 33. Not a lot of change here at the top. Van D moves up after the win over Dylan Ragusin. So, guys, that's a huge win, because Ragusin conceptually was undefeated, or it was undefeated, and conceptually, if he would have won the Big Tens, and there's the Big Tens, besides Shawver, he'd have to beat Nagao, and Buzakis, but he was been the favorite. He would have had a really high seed at nationals, and now it's going to be tough. 41. Cole Matthews, Mark, how glad are you that we're not trying to rank Cole Matthews this year?
Pretty glad. I would probably rank him a little bit higher than he is, but he's beat some really good kids, but he's lost some matches. You just scratch your head. So, what do you do with him? He belongs at 125. He'd be perfect at 125 because then it doesn't matter, because anywhere from 20th to 2nd could be in the finals of the national tournament. So let's do that.
I may get this wrong, but I think he has 3 top 10 wins and 4 top or 20 or worse losses. So It's like you just have no idea. Like, it's the opposite of guys like, okay, GT's ranked 10th. He's only lost to guys 1 through 9, and he's beat everybody 11 and below. Like, super easy to figure out where to rank him. It's complete bizarro world. Last year he went round to 12, I think, at NCAAs, but the year before he placed and came in like the preseason number 1 guy or number 2. So, he's a guy maybe to keep an eye on. He turned it on late in the year. The other thing at 41 is this whole Happel, Echemendia, Tegan Jameson thing, and how that's going to all get sorted out. 49. So did anybody see Ridge Lovett just going takedown, near fall, and an hour and a half of riding time in the first period? Like, that was GT. You and I are watching that together. That was shocking, didn't you think?
Yeah, I think Ridge proved to be a complete force at that weight class, because Austin, we all have a very, very high affinity for, and he's very talented. I think we were also kind of a little bit more of a head scratcher when Gomez chose down and to start the second, because he had already given up like almost 2.5 minutes worth of ride time.
I think they got it wrong. I think Lovett picked top, and then Gomez picked neutral third period. I think they announced it wrong, because you and me said that there. And because in the third period, when it went the other way, I'm like, they had to have announced it wrong, because that's like just bonkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. But you know how you watch matches and you go, well, okay, Grant beat me, but it was just one move or one whatever. I think I could get him the next time. Like, I don't, that was a tough one. If you're coaching Gomez, that figure out a way to beat Lovett the next time.
Well, I'm going to, let's give Gomez just a little bit of leeway there because he tried to throw early in the first period and missed it and got taken down to his stomach. The boots came right in right before he could even get up to his knees. And then it was just basically he got ridden like a drum. I mean, that's how it happened. If he doesn't give up that takedown, that's probably a very competitive match. What I'm going to see, what I think we're going to see in the next 3 to 4 weeks when they wrestle again at the Big Tens is Gomez will not go upper body. He's got great leg attacks. I remember he took Sasso down with a single leg a year ago at the All-Star meet, was down and took him down like 3 times in the last minute and a half to win that match. So he's good on his feet, and that's how he's going to have to attack Rich Lovett.
Yeah, he got the last takedown too. I'm just saying, I mean, you're right. Anything can happen, but it's tough to say like, hey, if you don't give up the 3, the 4, and the 2 minutes of riding time, you're right in the match. I mean, those are 3 separate movements, like a takedown, even if you just caught the guy, turning the guy and riding him where he never came close to getting even to his feet. Yep. The other interesting thing here is Wynn has Cannon Webster ranked and nobody else does, which leads me to believe that he's most likely redshirting, which means you can bump everybody else up a slot here, which means like a Jaden Abbas moves up a whole round from the round of 16 to the round of 12. So something to keep in mind there. All right, 57. Ryder Downey moves up with the win over Chittum. I will just say this, and this is my own editorial. There are some dudes not ranked in the top 8 that are scary. Bryce Andonian, Teague Travis is wrestling as well as anyone. Ryder Downey, Will Lewan, who's a past All-American, Brock Muller, who's a past All-American, Ed Scott, who's a past All-American, and then Cody Chittum, who's a superstar recruit. And I think Mark picked him to make the finals. And then Brayton Lee, who I know Mark picked to be an All-American. There are some cats that are ranked 9 on down that could be a real headache for these guys in the top 8. 65, Messenbrink moves up. I don't think we'll do it this week, but it's super interesting how this thing could end up being seeded at NCAAs. He's ranked ahead of Hamidi in 2 of the polls. The other 2 polls have a Hamidi ahead, and I think that'll get sorted out. I think they duel Wisconsin before the season is over, and if not, it'll certainly get sorted out at the Big Tens. No significant changes at 74. No significant changes at 84. No significant changes at 97. And heavyweight, Pitzer lost another match, but really no significant changes there. So
97, Buchanan got beat by Sloan, right? I mean, that was a big drop. Yeah.
He did. You're right.
Yeah.
No, he was undefeated. You're right. I missed that. I apologize. He dropped from 3 to 5. Hidley moves up to 2nd, which kind of where I think, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, GT, you watch a ton of freestyle. I mean, I thought Hidley was the 2nd best guy all year. I think we just kind of slept on him because Brooks tends to handle him. But I mean, Hidley had that unbelievable freestyle tournament in the fall at the Farrell, right? Where he beat like a world champion.
Yeah, I think, Hidley, both of those guys being at 84 last year and then bumping up to 97, I think also proved difficult for them to be. And once again, as you have told me about your previous ranking years, that, these guys are new to the weight class. So they had to start in other places where we all kind of knew that like they were supremely talented individuals and probably will end up being there by the end of the year. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that, Hidley is very deserving of the 2nd ranked, even though he, basically has moved up.
Yeah. And Sloan, I'll tell you a match that didn't change the rankings, but was interesting. Bennett Berge took Plot to overtime, and he had 2 takedowns, but he picked neutral, which is probably a good choice. Plot got a takedown and a ride out to get it to overtime, and then got the takedown in overtime. So it was like a 9-6 match where Plot essentially had 3 escapes and a takedown, and Berge had 2 takedowns before the overtime. So something just to keep your eye on. I think Bennett Berge might be a guy that could end up. Let me go back and see where he's ranked. Well, he's at 8, so he's not sneaking up on anybody. But I haven't watched him wrestle a ton. I know he's made an age group world team, right? GT's a U20 guy. So,
Yep.
I mean, no, he's good, but it's,
look at
what?
Chris Loka at 9. There's somebody I wouldn't sleep on.
For sure, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the more controversial tournaments in recent years, the Last Chance Open, I think has been canceled by Iowa State. So then the two big duels this weekend are Cornell, NC State, and Nebraska, Penn State. So let's look at Cornell, NC State first. Cornell. Okay, so here's one thing. Mark, Camacho's back in the rankings now, not Tremblay, right?
I think so.
So, I mean, they're going to end up going with, I guess they're both ranked here, but it does change things, right?
Yep.
All right,
I'm surprised he's back in. I thought he was pretty much. I was just under the impression he was hurt by the way he was wrestling early in the year. So I thought Tremblay was going to be given a shot. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So if we just do this off the rankings, no upsets. Unger is ranked above those guys, so it's 1-0 Cornell. Vito over Chiarini is 2. Ryan Jack over Cornell, it's 2-1. Arrington over Fernandez 2-2. Meyer Shapiro 3-2 Cornell over Ed Scott. Julian Ramirez over Fields 4-2 Cornell. Faison over an unranked wrestler, so 4-3. Foca makes it 5-3. Hidley makes it 5-4. Trefan over Fernandez, it's 5-5. So, Mark, you're really good at this. If you had to pick a team, who do you pick?
I think Cornell wins. I think they've got too much firepower. I think they could turn a couple of those matches that they're not favored in, and I think they're going to get some bonus points, especially at 165. I think Ramirez could get bonus points, and I think as good as Mauro Shapiro is, I think he could actually bonus Ed Scott.
GT, are we going to agree with the guru on this one or go the other way?
Where's the duel at?
That's the smartest question. Let me look and see. Cornell at NC State, so now you got your ammo.
Well, I think Cornell has the firepower to, flip some things from decisions to majors, but I also think that NC State has the ability to switch, L's to W's. I think that's probably the bigger swing. I think.
Yeah.
I think Mark is 100% correct, but I think, with Chiarini and Vito, that's going to be a good match. I don't think that it's going to go NC State's way, but that's a good one. Same thing with both those guys at 125 pounds. I could see that going NC State's way. Faison basically against kind of, anybody at Cornell. That could be a really big swing match, where it could go from, decision to, Cornell winning that match. So, but I would take Cornell in this duel, even though it's at home for NC State.
It's an awesome duel if everybody wrestles. And I feel like maybe the low-key bonus one would be Hidley if Cardenas, if he could get him tired, because he gets that underhook and, get to 2 or 3 takedowns. But it feels like it's somewhere in the vicinity of like a 17-16, 18-16, 17-17 kind of duel. So certainly one to watch. The other duel we said is
Penn State, Nebraska.
Penn State, Nebraska. You are correct, sir. It's Penn State at Nebraska. All right, so whoever's ranked higher at 25 loses. Is that what we're going with? All right, so here's based on rankings. Basically, the only weight that Nebraska's favored at is Ridge Lovett, Lenny Pinto. So let me set it this way. The over-under on Nebraska wins are 2.5. We go over or under? GT.
I'll take over.
You see flipping at 25 and then holding serve at 41 and 84.
Well, I mean, Jacob Van Die's been wrestling extremely well. And the gal got beat in overtime. So I think that's a match that, once again, as I'm taking my betting cap on, not necessarily like whatever. I think, once again, Bo Bartlett is the king of decisions, and Hardy is a very talented wrestler on top. And then I think probably it's going to have to be in those areas that I think where they could make some adjustments against Penn State. I just think that Penn State's roster from 57 up is pretty lights out.
Yeah. Mark, how many wins for Nebraska?
I'm going to go 2. I'm going to go 8-2 Penn State.
And are just the 2 that they win are the ones where they're ranked ahead of them?
Yeah, I think Lovett wins. I don't think there's any question there. And I think they're going to win another match. I'm just not sure where it is. I think Caleb Smith has a great opportunity. I think Hardy has an opportunity. I don't know if Pinto can beat Truex or not. I would go with Truex, even though Pinto's ranked over him. I think Truex is awfully seasoned. Is not going to get into the junk that Pinto wants to throw at him. Peyton Robb and Haynes, that was a great match last year at the Big Tens. And then Peyton, Robb got hurt or had poisoning at the NCAA with that skin infection. So, I mean, Peyton Robb can wrestle with anybody if he's on. So that should be a great match.
Yeah,
but
I think
2 wins by Nebraska.
I think the most entertaining matches, at least potentially, are 25, 41, because it feels like Bartlett, with the exception of, which sounds dumb to say out loud, the Real Woods match has had a ton of close matches. Haynes and Robb, like you said, Mark, and 84. So it feels like there'd be at least 4 matches that potentially could be one move kind of matches. And Antrell Taylor is probably more explosive than Messenbrink, and he may take Messenbrink down once or twice. I feel like if you had to pick a match that's the highest over-under of the night, that would probably be the match that I would pick, like the most points that go up on the board, because those guys are both just going to score and let it rip. And I mean, it feels like that's pretty standard operating procedure there.
So are you picking over or under, David?
I'll say 3. I'll go over.
You and Dan are going over, and I'm going under.
Yeah, well, we'll wing it. We'll wing bet it. So I will point out something, and I think, Grant, we were talking about it, but if not, I was talking to somebody about it in the car yesterday. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the off season with the Big 12 and the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 is essentially 2 schools right now, right, Grant? It's Oregon State and Washington State. And there's no others. All these other schools are trying to scramble and figure it out. So people that may not know this, there's 13 schools that are wrestling in the Big 12. Only 3 or 4 of them are actually Big 12 schools. All the rest are affiliate schools, like Northern Iowa, Mizzou, et cetera. It's Iowa State, it's Oklahoma State, it's West Virginia. There might be another one in there I'm missing, but it might only be 3. And then the Pac-12 has 6 schools. Arizona State will become a Big 12 school next year. Stanford becomes an ACC school next year. So they have 4 teams left over there. And you have to have 5 teams to have a real conference. People don't know this, but when the Big 12 was 4 teams for a while, they didn't actually, a conference champion didn't have an automatic bid. They were just all based on AQs. And I know this personally because I was very good friends with Eric Guerrero at the time, and he told me this. It's just nobody talked about it out loud. So it'll be interesting to see if they get absorbed and it's a gigantic Big 12 with like 17 schools or some affiliate schools. And geography wise, there's some things that make sense. Like, hey, maybe Cal BAP goes to the Pac-12, which geographically is way closer for them. You know, maybe these Rocky Mountain schools like Northern Colorado, Wyoming, Air Force, like maybe they go out there and now you have like one conference that has 8 to 10 teams and another conference that has like 9 to 11 teams. But this matters. I mean, if you're literally looking at the growth of wrestling, it matters. You know, you want those teams to be able to survive, and you have to figure it out, or some of these other schools could lose their programs, like Cal Poly, Bakersfield, and Poly especially has done a great job of fundraising. I think Bakersfield is almost sustaining themselves, like they're not even getting money from the university. So they got to have a conference to wrestle in. And if they have to travel all the way to these Big 12 schools, it's a concern. I know a lot of people aren't thinking about this because we should, anyway, it's just something to think about. GT actually reminded me it's Iowa State tournament starts tomorrow. We're recording a day early this week. So shout out to all the young men and women chasing down state titles the next 2, 3, 4 weekends, depending on which state you're in. Iowa's this weekend, Missouri's next weekend. I know a lot of the PA and California schools are that first weekend in March. We are blessed to get to talk about wrestling at all levels. And sometimes when you're talking about wrestling at the highest level, world, Olympic, NCAA championship level, you forget how meaningful it is for somebody to place at state, to qualify at state, to win a state title, and maybe just not wrestle in college because they got to go work. They got to support their family or be part of a state championship team. Like I watched the Oklahoma dual meet states last weekend, and especially the small schools, because I know the folks at Marlow and at Blackwell and how meaningful that is to those towns and those schools. So congratulations to all the coaches and kids that have won or even are participating, and best of luck to all of them. You know, GT, you're still recruiting those kids. Mark, you recruited a ton of those kind of kids over the years. So I will hand it off to you guys for any last words before we sign off.
Yeah, just a quick note, David. The Iowa State tournament started today. It's first year that they actually did last year, but this year, because they've added kids they let the top 3 in the districts qualify. So they started today. I think 2A wrestled this morning, 3A is wrestling right now at 1:30, and it's on Flow if people want to watch it. So yeah, just a quick note. It's changed. It always used to be Thursday through Saturday, but it did change.
Yeah, Missouri's the same thing. They're running class 1 and 2 of boys and 1 of girls on Wednesday, Thursday, and then 3 and 4 and 2 on Friday, Saturday next weekend.
Okay.
So GT, I know you're down there looking for some studs to wrestle next year. I assume it's got to be difficult for you to move through that arena with all the autographs you have to sign. So
yeah, not a chance.
All right. Well, for Mark and Grant, appreciate you guys watching and listening. Happy Valentine's Day. We'll see y'all next week.